Welcome, everyone. Please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and that we will now begin. Hello, everyone. My name is April Johnson. I am a member of the IFSP Southwest State Council. I've been an artist and an educator for more than 20 years. I believe that all people should be given their access to practice their highest gifts and potential. I'm a native of Charlotte, North Carolina, and now I reside in Danville, Virginia. I'm a self-described geek, and I enjoy drawing and poetry and fantasy fiction, all those great things. And I want to give you a wholehearted welcome to the IFSP Coordinated Regional Council meeting. This meeting is virtual and hosted by the IFSP Southwest Regional Council. On behalf of the IFSP Council members and the staff of DBHDS, we appreciate your attendance, time, and attention. The post-meeting content will be available on the My Life, My Community website for later reference. So, Heather, please post that link in the chat. And so that'll be available in chat in a moment. I also want to share with you that this is a public meeting. So while sharing communications, please do not share personal, private, or protected information. If you have questions specifically about IFSP funding, please visit the My Life, My Community website. And that link will be also posted in the chat. Thank you, Ms. Heather. Our educational topic for tonight is called Finding What Works, Education for Students with Developmental Disabilities. Every student needs different things to succeed in the classroom. Tonight, we're going to learn how to navigate educational programs for students from early childhood education programs through kindergarten up to age 22. The Individual and Family Support Program, IFSP, regional councils are proud to feature two guest presenters who can tell you about current programs in Virginia and how to find what works for you best. And those people are Tammy Burns from the Parent Educational Advocacy Training Center, PEATC, and Calypso Gilstrap from the Virginia Department of Education, the VDOE. Students and family members will also discuss their experiences collaborating with Virginia school systems. You're going to hear success stories and gain helpful strategies to help you and your student feel more confident when choosing an education plan. This evening, we have 3 family members with lived experience, and this panel has volunteered their time to graciously share their experiences and answer some of your important questions. Our panelists tonight are Sean Campbell, Daniel Soya, and Sarah Bunger. We do have a Hamilton Relay link in our confirmed captioner. Miss Stacy Potenza is the captioner from Virginia Hamilton Relay. Ms. Heather, please provide that link in the chat for those who may need that resource during this meeting. Also, if you have technical assistance or have questions unrelated to the meeting agenda, please email the IFSP community at dbhds.virginia.gov. And Ms. Heather's going to drop that in the chat for us as well. I'll give her a second. There we go. All right, so the ground rules for our meeting this evening. Attendees are encouraged to focus on our main presenters and ask questions within the contents of this meeting. So our ground rules are as follows. Please be respectful of our main presenters, panelists, and attendees. Your microphone is muted. Cameras are optional during the meeting. Please use the chat feature for all communications and questions. The IFSP staff will collect your questions and then prioritize those questions for responses later in the agenda. If you are unable to type your question in the chat, please use the raised hand feature that you can see on the slide. And that raised hand feature is located at the top of your screen. And we will circle back to capture your question. Please be advised Once again, this is a public meeting. There is no option for private chat messages during the meeting. All comments entered in the chat can be seen by all attendees. While sharing communications, please do not share personal, private, or protected information. Questions unrelated to this meeting should be emailed once again to ifsp support@dbhds.virginia.gov. And Ms. Rhonda, if you'd be so kind, please provide that email in the chat. Audience members, please refrain from placing resources in the chat during the main presentation. This can be a distraction for other attendees trying to gain information from our main presenters. Please note that DBHDS, as the operating agency of Virginia's DD programs, does not endorse any private agency to respond to questions that may contradict the advice of our expert presenters, panel, or internal staff. If you have a question, please place it in the chat, and our guest presenters or panel members will respond during the meeting if time allows. If the question cannot be answered during the meeting, it will be included in the post-meeting content archived on the My Life, My Community website. Attendees also, please note, take a break as needed. You're going to encounter a lot of information tonight. And last, please be advised that IFSP can remove anyone from this meeting who is deemed disruptive to the other attendees. Whew. I also want to take time, since we're all gathered here, to acknowledge our DBHD staff that's attending tonight. Wave your hand, please, Ms. Heather Hines, our IFSP program manager, Ms. Rhonda Gaines, our IFSP community coordination supervisor, Ms. Rachel Vamenta, our IFSP communications and program coordinator, Ms. Lynn Fetter, our IFSP support specialist, Ms. Dina Parker, Director, Community Network Supports. We all want to extend our welcome. And for the next segment, I will be turning this meeting over to Ms. Lynn Fetter.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to start out by talking a little bit about our program components. So as you can see on this slide, we have 4 main program components, and that's our funding program, family-to-family mentoring, peer-to-peer mentoring, our community coordination council, which our council program, which you right now are in a council meeting, and we are about to have a great meeting. Super excited. Thank you to everyone for understanding about our technical difficulties today. So to kind of give you a little bit of an overview about the program, the Individual and Family Support Program, or IFSP, helps people with developmental disabilities, or DD, and their families. We're a part of the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. Our main purpose is to help people who are on the Developmental Disabilities Waiver waitlist. Some of our programs and resources are also available to people who aren't on the waiting list yet, and to people who have a DD waiver. Before we get into our main presentation, I'd like to tell you a bit more about what we do. And we encourage you to share this information with others. The IFSP Community Coordination Program involves regional and state councils made up of people with developmental disabilities, family members, caregivers, and professionals. Council members help to organize coordinated council events like the one tonight. These events provide information on different topics throughout the year, and this night's is going to be about education. Council members also build local support networks, act as liaisons with the IFSP, and share helpful information in their communities. We're grateful for what they do to help others across Virginia. The IFSP funding program happens once a year. People on the DD waivers waitlist can apply for financial assistance for items and services that allow them to live in their homes in the community. We also provide family and peer mentoring opportunities through collaborations with the Virginia Commonwealth University, or VCU, and the ARC of Virginia. We also partner with VCU to provide Leadership for Empowerment and Abuse Prevention, or LEAP training. Our My Life, My Community website, developed with Virginia Navigator, serves as an accessible resource hub. It offers information on services and supports. You can also call the toll-free number for help navigating the website, or if you have any other questions about the DD system in Virginia. Our marketing and messaging efforts make sure important information reaches individuals, families, and the wider community. For example, our IFSP First Steps Guide offers an overview of the DD system and guides individuals and families to access resources and services. It's available on the My Life, My Community website and through our annual mailer to everyone who is on the DD waiver waitlist. We also distribute a monthly digest featuring resource highlights, training opportunities, and upcoming events relevant to people with DD and their families. If you'd like to stay informed, you can sign up for our email list through the link provided in the chat, or check out the My Life, My Community website. There will be more links in the chat shortly so that you can learn more about our programs. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook. I will now turn the meeting over to April Johnson again to introduce our presenters.
Thank you, Lynn. Our first speaker is Miss Tammy Burns. Tammy Burns is the Executive Director of PEATC, the Parent Education Advocacy Training Center. A former elementary school teacher, Tammy brings both professional and personal experience to her role. Informed by navigating the special education system as a parent of a child with autism. She holds a bachelor's degree from Virginia Tech and a Master of Education in Curriculum Instruction with a concentration in autism spectrum disorders from Arizona State University. In her role at PEATC, she provides strategic leadership for PEATC statewide programs and partnerships as PEATC supports tens of thousands of families annually through training, one-on-one assistance, and advocacy. Tammy has served in numerous leadership and advisory roles across Virginia over the last 2 decades. She is passionate about empowering families and individuals with disabilities to be informed, confident, and active participants in the special education process and in disabilities services decisions that impact their lives. Ms. Rhonda, please share Tammy's resources in the chat. Oh, and Rhonda, do we have a couple of questions for Ms. Tammy?
We'll hold those questions until after the presentation.
Okay, perfect.
So you can turn it over to Tammy. Thank you.
No worries.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for reading that. And it's always almost a little uncomfortable and a little, I think about, you said 2 decades. That means I've been around here a long time because, I've been working in this for 2 decades. You can kind of put all those numbers together. But thank you so much for having me tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I shared my screen, and if that's not great, just someone let me know out loud, and I'll see if I can fix that. But tonight I'm here to share and appreciate the opportunity to share about education for students with disabilities here in Virginia. I'm going to cover this information and hopefully provide you some things that you can use in your own world. So we're going to be looking at tonight, and what I hope that you'll take away from the session is shown here on the screen, and the focus and objectives. My goal here is not for everyone to read this and become more legal experts, but really to leave with a stronger understanding of how educational supports work for students with disabilities and how to be active partners in that process. So first, we're going to talk about different support options that may be available if your child is struggling in school, including informal supports, Section 504 plans, and special education services through IEPs, the Individualized Education Program. We will spend some time quickly looking at how 504 plans and IEPs are alike, but also how they're different. Families often hear those terms used together, and it can be confusing. So I want to provide a little context there, so you can better understand the eligibility, services, accommodations, and the protections available under each of those. Then we're going to walk through basically quickly the general components that are in an IEP and how IEPs are developed. We'll discuss the family's important role, key role in that process and why family participation is so important. Talk about communication and partnership and how they're another major part of that plan. Strong communication with families and schools can make a tremendous difference in student outcomes, even when difficult conversations arise. And then finally, I'll close by talking about procedural safeguards and make sure everyone's aware of what those are. Those are the legal rights and protections available to students and families under special education law, that IEP section, and talk about why understanding those rights are so important if you find yourself in a situation where disagreements or concerns occur. My hope is that you leave with this information feeling a little more informed, a little more confident, and better prepared to participate in the educational decision-making for your child. So let's start with, so my child is having difficulties in school, right? You see ... If your child is between the ages of 2 and 22 in Virginia, and you suspect that they might need some extra supports, they're having difficulties in school and like we need something more. Your first step is really to contact your local school. Your child's teacher is actually that first step, and then going out from there. And you can say, hey, I've got these concerns, and I really think we need to look at maybe some supports being put in place, and you can actually request an evaluation. When you do that, that request is called a referral. Many families first begin this process because something just doesn't seem right. Child may be struggling academically or behaviorally, socially, emotionally, struggling with communication, struggling with attention, or just organization of their school day or their school materials, or their thoughts when they're putting those down in writing. Sometimes, as a family member, you may notice concerns at home well before they're seen at school. But then other times, it might be the teachers that are the first to say, hey, we're seeing a few things and we have some concerns. Whenever those concerns arise, one of the best first steps is to meet with your teacher or your school team, if you already have a team of professionals supporting your child, and talk about what is happening, what supports may already be available in the classroom or the school setting. Oftentimes, there's a lot of supports that already exist in the classroom, whether you have a program, a plan, a formal IEP, or not. And so finding out what those are and what may be just able to be put into place there. Sometimes those informal interventions and accommodations can help address and even take care of the concerns that you have. If concerns continue, a referral for an evaluation may be an appropriate thing. A referral is a formal request. We always say, if you get to that place, put it in writing. It helps everybody have dates and timelines and all of those things. A referral is a formal request to determine whether a child may have a disability and that disability needs special education services. And when I say that, it is not to determine a diagnosis for a child. School teams do not diagnose children. That is in the medical world. In the school world, we're looking at, do they have a disability according to a checklist, a disability category determination that qualifies them potentially for some special education services, or do they have a disability documented somewhere else that may qualify them for some accommodations to be put in place? It is important for families to know that anyone can make a referral. That could be you as the parent, it could be a teacher, it can be another professional within the school. However, once that referral is made, the school system cannot move forward with any evaluations without informed parental consent. That's going to be required to do that. Once consent is provided, the school conducts evaluations in the areas that are related to the suspected disability And an eligibility team then reviews the evaluation results to determine whether the child has a disability, qualifies under the disability category that's in special education law, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or we refer to it as IDEA, and whether the disability affects the educational performance to the extent that the child needs specialized instruction and related services. Again, a medical diagnosis alone does not automatically qualify a child for special education services. The team must determine that the disability affects educational performance and creates a need for specially designed instruction. Some students may not qualify for an IEP after that process, but may qualify for protections and accommodations under Section 504. For example, I know a student who has lots of anxiety, has ADHD, another one that has a medical condition, who did not meet the qualifications after evaluations for an individualized education plan, an IEP, but they still needed accommodations, things like extended time, breaks, preferential seating. Even though that specialized instruction was not needed, they may qualify for a 504. Schools also have child find responsibilities under federal law. This means schools must identify, locate, and evaluate students who may have disabilities and need special education services. Throughout that process, parents are important members of that team. Parents' observations, concerns, insights about their child are valuable and are considered throughout the evaluation and eligibility discussions. So I've mentioned 504s, I've mentioned IEPs. Let's take a few minutes and try to quickly, and this is a quick version of a really long, complicated discussion we could have, but a quick discussion about what is the same when we talk about 504s and IEPs and what is different. Because families often hear the term 504 plan, IEP, used together, and it can be confusing, and they're not sure exactly what does that mean and what is more appropriate for my child. First of all, both of these types of supports are designed to support students with disabilities and help ensure that they can access their education successfully. Both 504 plans and IEPs require that a student has a disability. They involve evaluations. They provide supports or accommodations at no cost to the family, and they include protections related to discipline and access to education. Both also focus on helping students participate in school and access the general education curriculum alongside their peers to the maximum extent appropriate. However, there are a lot of important differences between the two laws that support with the supports they provide. An IEP falls under what I mentioned already, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. To qualify, a student must meet eligibility criteria under one of the IDEA disability categories, and they need that specialized instruction because of that. A 504 plan falls under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which is a civil rights law. The eligibility standard is broader. A student may qualify, for example, if they have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits, the way it's worded is a major life activity, limits a major life activity such as learning, concentration, communication, walking, or breathing. One important difference is the type of support that these things provide. An IEP includes specially designed instruction, measurable goals, related services, and progress monitoring. A 504 plan typically provides accommodations or supports that allow the student equal access. You hear me say that again, equal access, not specially designed instruction. It's around equal access to their education. And it can look like things like extended time or breaks, health supports, preferential seating, backup copy of notes, things like that. You may have a child with an IEP and you go, oh, I see those things on their IEP too. Yeah, that's right. Accommodations can be a part of an IEP. So you might have accommodations on an IEP if your child has an IEP, but the 504 is like a snapshot of accommodations only. It's not that specialized instruction. Both laws provide protections to families, but IDEA includes that more detailed procedural safeguards that we'll talk about in a bit, and more detailed dispute resolution procedures. It's also important for you to understand as a family member that not qualifying for an IEP does not automatically mean your child doesn't need support. Remember, they might qualify under Section 504 instead. No matter which one, both of these, 504 IEP, both of those laws around that, the goal of those is basically the same: helping students with disabilities access education and be successful in school. So for the remainder of this, my time here, I'm going to focus on students with IEPs because there's quite a bit to unpack there in this time. But do know that that 504 plan is still an option to look at with your team if an IEP is not appropriate for your child. So an individualized education program, an IEP, is a written plan developed for a student who has been found eligible for special education and related services under IDEA, that special education law. Important thing for families to remember is that an IEP is individualized. That's what the I stands for. There is no standard IEP, one-size-fits-all program. The services, the supports, the goals, the accommodations, the placement decisions are all based on the unique needs of that student. Another important thing to know is that IEP is designed to provide that specialized instruction we talked about. Specialized instruction means adapting instruction or the teaching methods or the learning environment to help a student make progress and to access the curriculum. IEP should reflect high expectations for students with disabilities. So it shouldn't be a focus on all of the challenges the student has, but also include strengths, growth, independence, and meaningful progress. It's also very important as a family member to know that families are equal, and that includes the student, are equal members of the IEP team. Parents are not simply observers at the meeting. Your input matters. The law is written that way to say that. Your input matters because you know your child in ways that other people around the table may not. Sharing information about your child's strengths, their communication style, their behavior, their interests and needs can all help the team develop a stronger and more appropriate IEP. Throughout the IEP process, parents continue to have consent, places where their consent is going to be needed. You're going to be asked to sign documents, for example. Informed consent is very important in special education. Parents may sign consent for evaluations, may sign acknowledgments that they received their procedural safeguards, may sign attendance or participation forms, and may sign consent or refusal related to the implementation of the IEP and the placement decisions made. Virginia is one of the, if not the strongest state when it comes to IEP consent rights for families. We go above and beyond what the federal law requires so that families are equal members of that IEP team and are the ones who sign consent or refusal for that implementation of the IEP that's been developed. Families should never feel pressured to sign anything that you don't understand. It is okay to ask questions, to ask for clarification, to say I need a few days, a few hours, whatever it might be, to review these documents carefully, or I just want to take some time to think about decisions before I provide consent. There's no pressure to sign, but your signature does mean something. So what is an IEP? What are the parts of an IEP? And I've tried to create a visual picture here of what that looks like. So when your child is found eligible for an IEP, again, that IEP is a written legal binding document that describes the student's educational needs and then the supports and services that will be provided. The key area is what you see here on the bottom of the screen where my cursor is moving at the moment. The present levels. That's where it all starts. The long name for that is present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, which is why I just say present levels, because it's a lot to say. But that's where things like evaluations go. It describes how the student is currently performing, not just evaluations, but information from the parent, information from the teacher, information from the student. How the student's performing academically, socially, behaviorally, developmentally, functionally. It should look at strengths, not just the needs, but the strengths, and explain how this child's disability is affecting their involvement and progress in school. The present level section forms the foundation. So you see, I specifically used a house image here because it is the foundation for the rest of the IEP. The goals, the services, all the things you see above that, accommodations, modifications, placement, are all there and based on whatever information is in the present level. So as a family member, as a person participating in the IEP, make sure the present level gives a really clear picture of what you would say your child's present level is. And I'll put a little caveat in there and say, if your child is struggling with a behavioral issue of any kind, make sure that is described very clearly in that present level. If there are to be supports, that can help support those behavior concerns. After the present level is all complete, the IEP team then moves on to make measurable annual goals. Again, based on what you read and see in the present level. The goals describe what the student is expected to work toward over the course of the school year. Goals should be very specific. They should be measurable. How can you count it? Can you count if they can do that? If you had to take tick marks to say they're doing it, they're doing it, they're doing it. Can you do that? Is it measurable? And it needs to be meaningful to the student's needs. After that, the IEP team and the IEP document will then identify special education services, related services. Those are related services are things like maybe occupational therapy is needed or speech therapy. Accommodations and modifications. What things need to happen to be able to work for the student to be able to work toward those goals. That's where those things might appear that we talked about for a 504 plan. That might be in a 504 plan if you had that only. For example, preferential seating, backup copy of notes, additional time, those type of things. The IEP is going to talk about participation in state and division-wide testing and what it looks like for that student. And finally, the IEP will talk about placement decisions. If for older students, transition planning occurs within this. In Virginia, transition planning must begin by age 14 and focus on preparing that student for life after high school. Now, I will say all IEPs should focus on preparing that student for life after high school. It all should be about where's the student trying to be when high school is over. But the law requires at 14 that the document takes a different look and you really start focusing on what do we need to put into place? What are the goals the student has for themselves, this family has for the student, for life after high school? What does that look like? So you'll see that is a part of this if your child is 14 or older. It can happen before then, but it's required by that point. Now, this is a lot. You don't have to memorize, all of these things, but this is the basic look of every IEP meeting, of every IEP document. I want to spend just a little more time on the placement, this area up here. And again, the last thing that happens, I should say, is that you get a document. If the parent then has the option to give consent or to sign refusal for that document, if the child is 18 or older and there's not other decision-making processes in place, that student then signs that consent and provides that consent. But let's look a little bit more at placement, because I know there have been some questions that I received about this, about placement here specifically in what we're talking about. Placement is one of the areas that, as a parent myself, and you as a parent often have the most questions about. I certainly had the most questions about that. One important thing to remember is that placement decisions should happen after the IEP team, which includes parents, develops the student's goals, supports, services, and accommodations. So you don't start an IEP meeting discussing placement and then develop the goals based on that placement. The goals come first, like the house that you saw. Placement is near the end of that discussion. Under IDEA, students with disabilities must be educated in the least restrictive environment, or what we call LRE. This means students should be educated as much as possible with non-disabled peers. The law states maximum extent appropriate. And you can see here this funnel going, starting at the top, that would be what's described as the least restrictive opportunity for a child, which is the general ed classroom with basically no supports. And then you start adding supports into that. That should be the first placement that is considered. A student should only be removed from that setting if the IEP team determines the student cannot make appropriate progress there, even with supplementary aids and services. And you can see the continuation of placement, and it gets more restrictive as you go here. It includes, general education with supports, collaborative or co-taught classrooms, resource support, where they may go into a classroom for part of the day, or a self-contained classroom for full day, separate schools, day schools, residential placements is way, very close to the bottom there, very restricted, and home or hospital placement, that being done there, which should be done in very limited, you see the cone goes down, limited circumstances. Placement decisions must always be individualized and based on the student's unique needs, not simply on disability labels, existing programs, staffing, or convenience. It is important to understand the difference between placement and location of services, which I won't get into a whole lot there, but just to say that the location of the services is where the services will be provided, such as the school building, the classroom, a provider. The placement is the things you see here. If you have more questions on that and want to talk about your child's specific thing, you can contact me and we can look at that in more detail. Finally, I want to add just a little bit more about LRE. Students don't have to earn time in general ed class by first being placed in a more restrictive environment and then earn time up the chain to be in a general ed classroom. It is actually required that you start at the top and determine if the child can be successful and work your way down that cone, if you will, to make sure the student can be successful and have an appropriate education. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk for everybody about communication and partnership. Strong communication and partnership between families and schools is essential. When IDEA was reauthorized, Congress emphasized several important principles, including that family and school working together on that IEP, for example. Parents bring valuable knowledge to the team. The student brings even more, I would say, valuable knowledge. You can share important information, as we've talked about. School teams and parents need to be collaborative in their approach and allow each other to be a part of the conversation. It's important to listen as much as communicate. We'll quickly talk about a couple of those things. These are just some of the things that you can communicate and add to an IEP meeting or a school meeting. You can see those pictured here: strengths and interests, your child's communication style, testing that you may have that you've done externally, learning styles, developmental medical history. You've been there, you know, and the challenges that you've seen. I want to take a minute, I'm kind of moving quickly here to make sure I get through things, to talk about communication and that collaboration with the IEP team, and some things to really consider, no matter if you're the teacher, if you're the parent, if you're the student. It is important in those meetings that everyone has the opportunity to ask questions and feels comfortable asking questions. And if you have questions, that you ask them. No question is a bad question. Make sure you're clear. You want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to be heard, not just to ask, but to be heard. We want to try not to make assumptions about what someone is saying or what someone is thinking. Give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Offer options. Be a participant. Everyone offer options that might work, and then value others' opinions. Recognize hard work of the family, of the teacher, of the student, and the contributions they bring. I love IEP meetings to start with. Let's all talk about something we're proud of that's happened this past year. Summarize what has been said so we're all clear when we leave the meeting what has been said. And when possible, end on a positive note. I mentioned earlier the procedural safeguards. If your child has an IEP, or you've been to an eligibility meeting of any kind around IEPs, you've probably been asked, do you have a copy of your procedural safeguards? You may have been even handed a copy. At one point in time, I think I had probably 15 or 16 copies of that at my house. They're available online as well. But the procedural safeguards, a lot of times you may look at it and you say, well, this is a lot of legal mumbo jumbo type stuff. What is this? I'm not even sure what this is. It's actually your educational rights, the special educational rights and protections of children and their parents in that process. It's related to important things like parent participation, access to records, the educational records, confidentiality, informed consent, prior written notice, which is so key if there's some kind of disagreement, independent educational evaluations, again, that disagreement on an evaluation, and then options for resolving disagreements, including formal options for those. Those are explained in that procedural safeguard. It's required that you have a copy, and the school offer you a copy at least once a year and at certain times. So you may be offered one multiple times in a year. Remember, in Section 504, you have protections too, although they're different than what's provided under IDA, so they are different than these procedural safeguards. Take time to read those procedural safeguards if your child has an IEP. Ask questions. If you need help understanding them, reach out to us here at PEATC. We can help you. We have some plain language documents about what those are.
Tammy, I would like to let you know we have 5 minutes and we want to get in a question or two.
Okay, I'm going to leave this on the screen for just a second then, and I will move over to questions. I mentioned, you heard that I work for PEATC Virginia's. We are Virginia's Parent Training Information Center. We cover the entire state. We are here to help empower families through these processes, help you understand, help you be a participant. Our services are free and confidential. I would highly encourage you to check out our website, full of resources. Some will be put in the chat, or a couple of links for those, but please make sure to check those out. If you're struggling, if you want a template for how to communicate to and ask for an eligibility or ask for an IEP meeting, we have those on our website as well. So I'm going to stop sharing screen and I will take questions.
Okay, thanks so much. We have 2 questions that were provided earlier, and then we had a question in chat that I'm going to hold. Farah, I'm going to hold your question until all panel. The first question is, my child has an IEP and I don't think she's making progress at school this year. I feel like no one is listening to my concerns. What are my options?
Okay. First of all, I'm a big proponent of go to the teacher first. Sit down with the teacher, have a meeting. If you haven't done that, share your concerns. Be open about your concerns and what those are. The teacher may also have concerns or may be able to provide input. Again, there might be informal things that are already can be put into place in the classroom. You don't need a plan to say the child needs to sit closer to the teacher. You agree that the child sits closer to the teacher, for example. You might have something like that. If you think that you need more than that, you certainly can request that the school look at providing your child with some special education services. You can make that referral yourself. If you need help, there's a template on our website that you can copy and paste. Do it in writing. But make that referral and see if your child might be eligible for some more formal type supports, whether it's a 504 or an IEP.
Okay, thank you. The next question may be similar a little bit. It says, but my child doesn't have any supports at school right now and is struggling. What do I do to get an IEP?
Right. Yes, very similar. So you want to make a formal request, and I always, again, put it in writing. In writing, you can send it to your child's teacher. You can copy the principal. You can send it to the principal. Some schools are assistant principal. You already may know that they may be working with special education and disability services in their school. So you can send it to everyone, and you just say, I'd like my child to be evaluated for special education services. At that point, that written communication starts a timeline. There's dates and times and things that this all has to happen. So that's why it's important to put that in writing and not passing in the hallway, and then to go from there through that process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for our first part of this educational session. I learned a lot just listening to you. With all the great information that you shared. And and thank you for taking a couple of questions. I will turn the agenda back over to April Johnson, and she can introduce our next presenter. So Tammy, please hang around for all panel questions.
Hi there. Our next presenter is Miss Calypso Gilstrap. She is a national board certified teacher, which is amazing. Her career spans teaching, technology, and educational leadership. She began as a high school teacher before stepping into what she fondly calls the best job in the school, serving as a school librarian. From 2009 to 2022, she championed literacy and innovation, transferring libraries into dynamic learning hubs. That is so cool. Her dedication and impact have earned her numerous honors, including Norman High School Teacher of the Year in 2012, the VAASL James Region Librarian of the Year in 2021, RVA Tech's Community Impact Award in 2022, and the SETDA State Achievement Award in 2025. Today, Ms. Gilstrap serves as the Executive Director of Innovation at the Virginia Department of Education. In this role, she leads statewide efforts to integrate cutting-edge technology, reimagine school models, and develop digital tools and policies that elevate instruction across Virginia's public schools. That just sounds cool. That really does. Ms. Rhonda, if you could, please put Calypso's resources in the chat. And I will turn this meeting over to our presenter.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. And thanks, Ms. Burns, for setting me up for my part. I feel like I learned so much. And even though we did not communicate about our presentation, so much of what I'm going to talk about is so similar to what she's talking about. So thanks so much. I do have a really great job. I have a super cool title, but really what I'm here to do is to help you guys figure out all the different ways that you can navigate going into schools. And specifically today, we're going to talk about how you can access virtual learning and maybe things you can think about as you're exploring virtual learning options for your children. And maybe some of you might even have stories that you can relate to, because you have a child in virtual learning and that's really being successful for you. I'm really passionate about virtual learning because I went to high school in a very rural part of Oklahoma. I graduated with like 18 people. I only had 400 people like K through 12 in my entire school division, very tiny place, and I grew up on a farm. And I wanted to go to college, but we didn't have like all the advanced learning opportunities that we have now. So as I came into being a teacher and those kind of things, I just kept thinking, man, it would have been great if I could have taken those like advanced calculus classes or those advanced English classes or had access to dual enrollment or CTE courses. Because in my high school, I had one English teacher for all of high school. I had one history teacher, one math teacher, one science teacher. We had 2 electives. We could take ag or home ec. That was it. So I'm super passionate about virtual learning because I just want more kids to have more access to specialty programs that maybe aren't offered in their school. So my intended outcomes tonight are, one, I'd like you to understand what the virtual learning options are in Virginia. You may not even realize we have virtual learning options. 2, let's see. Oh, sorry. I'm fast forwarding through my slide deck and that's not good. Okay, there we go. Maybe I pushed the right button now. It's of course not working since I work in virtual learning. And then I want to explain the roles, services, and supports that you might be offered if you choose virtual learning. And then I think the thing you'll walk away with the best is we have a really great resource we're going to share with how do you collaborate and communicate with your school division if you're going to enter into a virtual learning space and you're exploring that. So don't worry if you don't take good notes or you don't have access to this. Everything we have is on our Department of Education website. If you type in like virtual learning for families, Virginia, DOE, you'll probably Google it fine. But if not, you can navigate there. And this year we actually opened up in August a website just for families so that because we used to have like everything and it was all EduSpeak and those kind of things. And we're also updating our website to where we're going to have a YouTube video that's way cooler than what I'm going to be talking about tonight. That is going to be shared on our website here in a few days. So it's already public. I just haven't linked it in there yet because my kid graduated high school today, and so I'm kind of like feeling behind. So sorry, it's not on there yet. It'll be up tomorrow or on Tuesday at the latest to show so you guys can understand from the YouTube like, what this looks like when we talk about virtual learning. So the first outcome I want to show you is what are all these roles in virtual learning? So the first thing that VDOE does is we are responsible for kind of the regulation part of virtual learning. So there's the Department of Education, the local school board, and then the virtual program themselves. Those are kind of the big 3 entities that come together to decide, is a virtual program going to be decided in a school? Of course, teachers and students and principals are all involved too, but the 3 big entities just to get us started with that relationship are the Virginia Department of Education, a local school board, and the actual provider. And each group has their own responsibilities, and so we kind of want to help you understand if you're having a problem, who should you go to? So the first thing is VDOE. So we work in Richmond and we're at the Capitol. We work for the State Board of Education. And what our job is to inform the public about the options. So we have a very public website, and then we manage who's allowed to provide virtual learning in Virginia. So your school division can hire somebody to do virtual learning, but they can't hire the teacher unless we approve it. So that program has to have a teacher that's licensed and they have to have the content. We have to monitor that. So the Virginia Department of Education kind of makes the guardrails around, this is a list of providers that can provide you the content and the licensed teacher. We also collect a lot of data. We have about 40,000 kids in full-time virtual learning and then another 20,000 that are in part-time. So we get a lot of data about those kids. We get a lot of data from every school. And we take that and then we write a very fancy report for the governor. It's very boring to read, but luckily we have AI now, so maybe you can read that report and have it read it to you and digest it for you. We also make sure that all of our boards, all of our school boards are following the regulations that the law has. We're not lawyers, but we do go and check and be like, oh, that policy doesn't look like it's in alignment. We do host twice a year virtual learning advisory committees. Those are public meetings just like this one. You can attend, ask questions, make comments, give feedback to the virtual learning things. So that is a great place that if you have some ideas or you want to bring some new information about virtual learning, or a positive or negative experience, or things that we could do to make it better, then you can come to those advisory meetings, and we do put those on the website, and they're on our communications. And then what we're doing tonight, we're supporting you and trying to help you understand what virtual learning looks like and how you can navigate that. And then, unfortunately, the bad part of my job is sometimes I have to get onto some school divisions for not following the federal and state codes and the board regulations. But that does not happen very often. And luckily, I have lots of friends to help me with that if that does happen. Okay, so now we're going to move from the Virginia Department of Education, which I hope you'll never have to talk to because you only have to talk to us when something goes really bad, to your local school board, which you should be involved in, because they're actually the ones who get to decide what is available in your community. The Virginia Department of Education cannot tell a school division you have to have virtual learning or you have to use this kind of virtual learning. We don't get to do that. The local school board is the #1 authority on what programs are available in a school. So they set the rules on who can enroll in that program, how do students participate, how is credit awarded in those courses. They can even get down to what's the schedule look like, how do we take attendance, all the things about that. School boards also have to make sure that every single student, including those with disabilities, get all the services that they're entitled to, even if you're in a virtual setting. So that is just something like if you're not getting something that you're expecting in a virtual environment, or you're not getting a virtual service that you're expecting, that's a local school board decision. The other thing that sometimes parents get frustrated with is there might not be website information like we have, and that's something that you should talk to your school board about, is that it is required by law that every school division has a website that says what virtual options are available in their school division. We did do an audit this year and almost everyone had one. So please go check there first if you're curious, what's my school division offer? And then they also can decide if there's going to be a fee attached with virtual learning. It's very unusual, but sometimes there could be a fee. And so last but not least, I hope what you can take away from all of this is that school boards adopt the policy that allows for virtual programs to come into the school division, and then they decide who is eligible for that and why they would have that program and that kind of stuff. Now, no matter what, let's clarify, every school division, no matter what, and I want to focus this because this is a big problem that we have sometimes with virtual learning, is the enrolling school division. Enrolling school division is the one that decides what FAPE is. They are the ones that have the free and appropriate education. So if I live in my county, but then I choose to go to a virtual program that's not in my county, so I become a what we call non-residential student in a different county. So like, let's say I live in Henrico County and they don't offer the virtual program that I think is best for my kid. And I choose to send my kid across the school division line, and I'm going to enroll in Chesterfield County. Chesterfield County then becomes my enrolling school division, and Henrico has no responsibility to provide FAPE for me anymore. It is Chesterfield County. So if you think about the money part, who's getting the money to educate your child? Chesterfield. So Chesterfield then has to provide it. And that's where it gets tricky. Well, my kid needs occupational therapy a couple of days a week, and Henrico County provides that. Well, once you move to Chesterfield, Chesterfield has to provide that service now, not Henrico. So happy to clear that up with anybody else. I hope it makes sense. I think it kind of makes sense. It's kind of like if I went to the University of Virginia, I couldn't expect the Virginia Commonwealth University to provide services for me. So kind of got to think about it like that. Okay, so the last thing we have to think about is we have the Virginia Department of Education. We talked about the school board and the school board's responsibilities. And now we have who's actually providing education. So the first thing is I want to make it really clear is that every single course and every single teacher is high quality. There is never a time that we don't have a class that is just as rigorous and as important and does not meet the accreditation standard for education. So every single class, if it's an English class, it has to be 140 hours and a kid has to take the standard of learning test at the end and they have to pass it, and they have an English teacher with a license that teaches that class. So there's never a time that you would be in a virtual learning setting where you wouldn't have the same quality of teaching. I think sometimes people think about COVID and the chaos and that kind of stuff. That is not what's happening in our virtual programs in Virginia, because these are people who have been highly trained on how to teach in a virtual program. And these are students who have chosen to take virtual classes as well. The other thing that you're going to really see too is that they are required to follow all the laws of teaching just like everybody else. So they have to take attendance. They have to grade your papers on time. They have grades. We even have a school division that has fire drills in their virtual school, just so kids know what it's like to have a fire drill. They have circle time. They have vowels reading tests. They have all the things. There's even a school that they say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning at the beginning of their school day. So it's just like school. It's just that you're going to be at home maybe, and you also might be in the school but taking a virtual class. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. The other thing that you should be seeing in a virtual program is the class sizes should be the same. So you shouldn't see like 90 kids in a class just because it's virtual. You should only see like that top of whatever it is in each class. So I think it's 150 students can be taught by one teacher per day or per semester. So that's the same, exact same. And then you should be getting report cards. You should be getting all the things that you would get if you were in a normal school. So because you are in virtual program does not mean you get less of an education or different education. It should be equitable, whether you're in person, online, or online in person. And we'll talk about that more here in a second. All right, now, parent support. That's something else that I think is a little different, is if you choose to put your child into a virtual program, you do have to do a little bit more work sometimes. What's nice is you have more transparency if you're at home with your child, and you may see more communications if your child's online, but that also means you have to stay way more engaged, because sometimes when your kid's in virtual, they may like think, oh, I can go outside and play for 30 minutes when I'm supposed to be taking math. Well, as a parent, we kind of have to be like, hey, it's time for math. You got to come back inside. So you have to know also, like I talked about, you need to know what school division you're actually enrolled in. And I know that sounds silly, but it's not like a school. Like if I go up the street to my neighborhood school, I know that's where my kid goes to school. And in virtual world, it's a little harder to tell that. So make sure you know what school division, what legal, like state school division you're enrolled in. And then another thing you need to know is like, how do I contact that school? Like, who's the principal? Who's my teachers? How do I get a hold of them? Is there a counselor that I need to talk to? A nurse? All the people, you need to almost have like a really good address book of that. Now, if things change, a little difference too is like if something changed at home and my child was in person school, then I would probably just go and like call the counselor and I would talk to that one counselor. But when you're in an online environment, it's a little different because you have the school, you have the provider, you may have the teacher. And so we've got to make sure we're like copying everybody on those emails, calling everyone, or making sure that the school has a really clear system of how to communicate. So for instance, I have a kiddo who just graduated high school and she went to 2 different schools. So she went to her zone school and then she went to a special needs center. And anytime she was going to be absent, I always had to call both schools because that was my responsibility as a kid who was in a special program. So just making sure communication is really clear, understanding what's going on at the school and those kind of things. And then one thing that really helps us and school divisions is parent feedback is really important. So make sure you go to those parent teacher conferences. Make sure if there is a survey that you're filling it out and those kind of things, because it is a little different than like having like a open house at the school. That's not going to happen at a virtual school, or having like an assembly and those kind of things might not be happening. So parent surveys are really, really important for virtual learning programs to understand where they're at and what they're doing. All right, so that's kind of the roles and responsibilities. So again, we went over the Department of Education, we're the regulator. The school board is the one that gets to decide what's going to be offered. We have the provider, which has to do the high quality instruction with the high quality teacher. And then our job as parents, which is to make sure we support our kid, keep them engaged, and communicate with the teachers in the school and making sure we're all in the loop. So that's kind of the roles. Now let's talk about what are the options in Virginia. So in Virginia, we have kind of 3 big buckets of what are the providers that could be optioned. Now there are a lot of gray areas, and I love that because I'm in innovation. So this is just a very big generalization of your 3 options. And if you wanted to talk to a counselor, this is a good place to start with. Of like, these are the 3 choices in general that we have. So the first one and the most popular one is the Virtual Virginia program. A lot of people have heard of it. Now, it's not to be confused with VAVA, which is Virginia Virtual Academy. And so we get those confused all the time. So we have Virtual Virginia, and then I'll talk about the MOPS here in a minute, which is a fun word anyway. So Virtual Virginia is an actual program of the Virginia Department of Education. It has been around since the 80s, which you might be thinking, how did they do Virtual Virginia in the 80s? Well, Virtual Virginia in the 80s was like a correspondence course with mail, and then it switched over to being like on public television, and we like would tune into PBS at a certain time, and the teachers would be teaching virtually. So it's been around for a long time. They really know what they're doing. And the reason they started was to expand AP dual enrollment and world language classes for students who didn't have those opportunities in their home school. So for instance, we have a cohort of kids who want to take Korean this coming up year. I guess they might be really popular with that Demon Hunter show or the K-pop bands. And so we have like this group of middle school, high school kids who want to take Korean, and their school called up Virtual Virginia, and they were like, we only have like 6 kids, and that's not enough for us to get a teacher, plus finding a Korean teacher is really hard. So Virtual Virginia is like, yeah, we can do that. And so now we're going to have a whole Korean program at Virtual Virginia for any school division who chooses to enter into contract. So that's kind of what they're designed for. They just do 1 or 2 classes per year for each kid. They don't have full-time students really. It's just for like mostly 6th through 12th grade kids who are taking kind of funky classes that don't fit in anywhere. The other thing that they do a lot of is summer school for kids who want to get ahead. So they offer health and PE 9, health and PE 10, personal financial literacy. Maybe they take a bridge to algebra course, like you're doing really good in 8th grade, but you're not quite ready for algebra 1 yet, so you could do a bridge to algebra course. So they do those kind of classes too. But again, most of the time, if you're at Virtual Virginia, you are taking 1 or 2 classes per semester or year. It's mostly secondary kids, and usually you're sitting at your home school during the day, like maybe 3rd or 4th block, taking that Virtual Virginia class. Virtual Virginia has the teacher, they have the content, and and it's live teaching. So there's a teacher talking for 90 minutes or whatever it is during the daytime. So that is the Virtual Virginia program. You can see the numbers there. It was humongous in 2021, which is why we dropped that number off, because that was kind of ridiculous. But you can see we're growing. The 25-26 number, that's actually only halfway through the year, which is why the number is smaller. But you can see mostly part-time kids. If you click on their website, they have all the courses that are available and those kind of things. Again, though, you got to go to your local school division to say, hey, I want my kid to do Virtual Virginia. Is that an option? And they can say, no, we don't do that. All right. Another choice is a MOP, which is a multi-division online provider. These are 22 different organizations. They could be a for-profit company. You've probably heard of like Stride, Edmentum, Pearson, or sometimes we call them K-12. They're called in Virginia like Virginia Virtual Academy, Virginia Connections Academy. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember all of them. They're all very similar sounding to me because I understand them as the companies and not as their school name because of my job, but they're all on our website. We have over 30,000 students, and most of those kids are full-time, and they're more like in the kindergarten through 8th grade. There are high school kids too, but it's really full-time students who are at home, and this is a homeschool kind of option. It is not homeschool, it is public school, but they are mostly, they have chosen to stay at home with their parents, and they're taking an online course. And that is mostly full-time. Again, it's an awesome option for parents who want to stay home with their kids and don't feel comfortable being a homeschool parent, but the school division still has to offer that. It is also a very common option for our homebound families or families who have kids who have anxiety, ADHD, and they just can't sit still and those kind of things. And it's just like this is an option for them. There is a program for some high schools and for any school that they would have the kids be at school doing it virtually. So that's not completely unheard of, but just in general that Virtual Virginia is part-time and the MOPS are full-time in general. You can also look up, if you go to the query tool, and you can look up and see, you can look up your school division and be like, I want to do this, do they have it in my school? The other thing that MOPS do is they have some kind of funky classes that are very specialized. So for instance, one of our MOPS is a coding school, and all they offer is coding classes. And so those that would be like maybe a STEM center or a school division that has a big computer science cohort of kids. They might take the MOP class or the STEM class or the coding class just during the school day. So they could be anything. I mean, really, the MOPS could be anything, and those have been around since 2012. So the thing that's kind of different about the MOPS is that most school divisions only have one MOP, where Virtual Virginia is like 131 different school divisions are using them, and then the MOP, it would be like maybe only 6 school divisions are using this MOP and 8 school divisions using this MOP and those kind of things. So you might have a MOP, but you might not like that MOP. So you kind of got to navigate that with your school, which we're going to go over here in a few minutes. And then becoming more and more popular, although unfortunately some of our school divisions have decided to close their virtual academies this year because, well, they're moving to a different model. But school divisions can have their own, and that means that they are taking care of the virtual program. They are not hiring a provider, so they have their own licensed teachers and their own content, and they're teaching virtually in their school division. So these are the school divisions right now that have a virtual academy. Now, some of them, there are others that we know exist, but they don't code them the way we can recognize in our data system. But you can see in that graph, we're getting more and more kids who are getting enrolled in virtual programs, and to where like Henrico County has a virtual program, K through 12. They have their own school, they have their own teachers, and they even like have prom and virtual high school and those kind of things. So they have a real graduation for the virtual students and those kind of things. So that is kind of the 3 big buckets. There are lots of weird iterations of all of those, but those might be the first 3 places to start. If I was going in to have a meeting with a counselor, I would be like, do you have Virtual Virginia? Do you offer a MOP? And do you have a school? And those would kind of be the first places to start. And if they say we don't have any of those things, then you could maybe start talking about, well, is there a way we could get a virtual program for my child? So, all right. So I think the final question to really ask is, how do I know if virtual learning is a good choice for my kid? And so this will definitely be a great resource for you. It's 2 pages, front and back, I think, that we have made that's a PDF. And I'm not going to go through all the questions because I have 5 minutes left, but I want to make sure you kind of think about, this is a really hard decision to make because it's so different, right? So I wanted to make our team wanted to make a really clear, like, all right, you're thinking about virtual learning and the grass is sometimes greener on the other side. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And so like kind of helping you as a team, as with your child, with your partner, with your school, all those kind of things to be like, is this a good choice for us? So first things first is, do they offer a virtual program? If they do offer a virtual program, is it full-time? Is it part-time? Is it just one course? Is it the entire curriculum? What are the local policies for participating? So sometimes they're like only 6th through 12th grade can do it. Sometimes they're like, we don't offer kindergarten, 2nd grade, so you gotta figure out. Another thing that might be happening is like one of the things that people don't realize is that, are you going to not be able to play sports? Some school divisions allow their virtual students to do all the sports and be in the clubs and do dances, and other school divisions don't allow that. So that could be either one. It's really important to understand, how is it going to be delivered? The school division will offer you don't have to have your own device. The school division will give you the device, but you need to understand, like, is it going to be on Google? Is it going to be on Canvas? Is it going to be a click-through class? Especially if a student have physical or like a vision disabilities or hearing disabilities, like thinking about, are they going to be able to navigate that system? And if not, what can the school division offer so that we have that? So how I got my RVA Community Impact Award is we had students that had physical disabilities, and we wanted to make sure they still had a high heart rate when they were in PE. And so we created a whole virtual reality system that mimicked what the kids were doing. So if they were playing soccer, then we created VR soccer games. So the kids that were, not able to play soccer could get their heart rate up on the VR, and they were like, running around in their VR headsets and, cruising around, and they were able to match their heart rates with the kids who were actually on the soccer field. So that was something that we tried really hard so a school division can do that. Just because a child has things that maybe are not traditional doesn't mean they can't have access to the computer or the virtual learning session. So thinking about access, how are we going to get a hold of this? All right, then what are the expectations? How is attendance taken? Some virtual programs, it's asynchronous. That means the kid just has to do their homework sometime during the day. So that means they have to go to school for 6 hours, but it could be any 6 hours you want, which is great for a kid who is like super hyperactive, right? Like I can only handle 20 minutes of class at one time and then I gotta go run around. And you're like, perfect. You just go do 20 minutes, go run around for 10 minutes, come back. What counts as participation? Do you have to actually like have your camera on and talk, or can it just be doing your homework? How do I know my kid's not engaged or being inactive? So for instance, in virtual Virginia, if a kid does not log in 2 days in a row, you get an email that says, hey, your kid didn't do their work for 2 days in a row. What's going on? Let's make sure we're doing good. All right. Something else you need to think about is what's the routine going to look like? Like do we have a space in our house for my kid to do their work? If they don't have a quiet space and there's like a lot of chaos going on, that might not work at your house. What is going to be hands-on? So like I keep talking about my own kid, I'm sorry, but she just took a physics 2 class at her homeschool, but it was virtual. And so like, how do you do science experiments when the teacher is virtual and you're in person? How does that work? Those kind of things. So think about routines, making sure that your kid's up at the same time every day, that they have all the things that they need, those kind of things. Setting up how often are we going to talk to the teacher and the school, and how's all that going to work? So making a good routine. What are you going to do when there's a snow day? This is the worst. Guess what? Virtual kids don't get snow days because they're already virtual. And so what are you going to do when the rest of your kids are home for a snow day and your virtual kid still has to go to class? All right, instruction. What's that going to look like? Is it going to be live? Is it going to be recorded pre-hand? Is it going to be a mix? Are you going to have it like where they're half in person, half at home? Is it going to be, what's going to look like? How much independent work do they have to have? And that's something that you really got to work with your kid on. Like I have 4 kids, and some of my children would never been able to be in virtual school that was asynchronous because they are not motivated. They want people, they want interaction, they want the discussion. And if they had something where they had to watch a video and then take a quiz and then write a paper, they would not have been successful at that. So you got to be able to think about that. How many hours are you going to have to do on your own? So if you're in high school and you're taking a dual enrollment class, you might have 2 or 3 hours of homework every week that you're not going to have the teacher to help you with. So is there any tutors that are going to be able to help you? What kind of learners tend to do well in virtual programs in our schools? All right, how am I going to connect? It's really, really important, especially if you have younger kids, that it's not just school. Make sure that there's still play time, they still have circle time, they're still interacting with each other. And we don't want that interaction to just be like, okay, we're going to play Minecraft together. Like, let's try to tap down the screen time. But like, are we going to have a PE time where we're running around and playing a game? Are we going to do music? And we're going to have activities? Are we going to do some artwork? Those kind of things. So what are the fun, interactive things that just because a kid's virtual doesn't mean that they should not get the things that they would normally have in a school. They should have library time. They should be having art time. They should be interacting and having social time and recess and outside time, those kind of things. And then what kind of support are you going to need to give during the daytime? So especially if you have a kid who's like under 12, like you might have to be at home and you might have to help them with their work and navigating and those kind of things. But it's also really important that you stay out of it too. And that's really, really hard for me when I was a teacher during COVID and my kids were home and I was like, ooh, I want to learn about your, biology lesson. That looks cool. Like the biology teacher's like, Miss Gilstrap, go away. You don't need to be involved in that. All right. What is it?
Calypso, we have about 5 minutes remaining for this session.
Okay. All right.
And we have a couple of questions, but
sure.
Yeah,
all right.
Proceed.
I'm going to hit this one slide because this is really important for this particular crowd, and that is specialized service delivery. Just because you're virtual does not mean you don't get the specialized services. The teacher who's teaching should be doing the accommodations that are appropriate and would be giving. So like, because I'm an English teacher and I need open notes, that would be appropriate for me to give. But if there are specialized accommodations, that is where you're going to really have to work through those with your teacher. And I think that's what you're talking about with Ms. Burns and the IEP, that you really have to think about what's the placement in the virtual space and then what services am I getting in that placement. So if you have in-person school and you have a speech therapist and that could not be given virtually, then you may not have virtual learning as an option. But maybe speech pathologist or speech therapist can come to your house, or maybe you can do that virtually. I don't know. So you'd have to ask all those questions. So, all right, no matter what, please look at that list. It's long. I'm always happy to meet with other people. But even if your school says, no, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing that. Stay engaged. Go to the local school board, talk to the community and say like, hey, this should be an option in our community, because every year school divisions make changes about what their school programs are. And so that'll help you stay involved, stay excited about virtual learning, and share stories if you're having a positive experience. So please feel free to email me anytime, innovation@DOE. Sorry, I went over, by 3 minutes.
No, we
I just get
made
so
some
excited.
adjustments. I know it was great enthusiasm. I do have a question, and the question is, how will communication between teachers, service providers, and families be handled to make sure a person's child's progress and needs don't get lost in virtual settings?
I think that is it's hard because it's virtual, so you don't have like a school to go up to and have a parent-teacher conference. In some ways it's harder, but in other ways it's easier because everyone is virtual. So a group email is great. I love a group email when it comes to virtual things, making sure you understand what is appropriate. So group text, probably not appropriate, to have a group text with the principal and the teacher during the school day, but the group email might be great. There also might be part in the learning management system. A lot of the times our virtual students actually have a lot more clarity in what their assignments are, what their progress is on those assignments. The assignments are usually graded faster because they are being graded by virtual master pathways and those kind of things. So I just think it's important that, get on the Sunday mailing list, know what school you're going to, know who the teacher is, know who the principal is. So don't enter into the classroom without knowing, how do I communicate with everybody? And that's kind of your responsibility. But I'd also say teaching your child to advocate for themselves too. Teaching them, how do you send an email? How do you ask nicely of the teacher to explain something a little? How do you raise your hand in Teams? How do you share? How do you unmute? All the other things that we are always struggling with in our own Teams meetings. And so that's probably my best, is just get engaged, figure out how to do it, and engage, and do that before you start into the virtual program. Don't wait 6 weeks and then be like, what? How do I email the teacher? Because that's the bad time to figure it out.
I think you may have answered this second question, but it says, what responsibilities do schools and divisions have to ensure that students with disabilities receive required services and supports during their virtual instruction?
Yeah, so I think too, it's important, probably a little different than if you were in a traditional brick and mortar school, is in the virtual, what services are in the virtual. So if you choose to put your child, I don't know if that would be an IEP change or just like being able to communicate better. That would probably be for a special education teacher or IEP team to answer, but like being really clear that the teacher of record who is teaching the class provides this service, and this is what the accommodations look like, and then these are the specialized services, and then this is what an IEP teacher. So like that's where you're going to kind of, in a virtual space, sometimes you have even better one-on-ones and IEP, supports and those kind of things. And you might even have like a reading specialist who can come into the classroom a little easier because they're not driving all over town and those kind of things. But sometimes those things don't exist in the virtual space. So just being really clear and asking, again, communicating with, all right, where's my kid getting this? Where's my kid getting this? Where's my kid getting that? And then I do think every virtual program is set up in different ways. So you just kind of have to ask, like, how does this work in this space? Because I don't know. Also, be aware that you can do half and half. If your child needs one day in school and one day at home, that is available too. Like you can have just part-time virtual students. I actually was just at graduation today, and there was 6 kids from Henrico Virtual Academy that were graduating from the Tech Center. So they must have done homeschool virtual academy and then Tech Center the other day. And so that's totally a possibility too. So just ask questions and go through that resource list that I handed out and see. And I'm also open. So if you have questions we should add to that, please let me know, because I have not had to navigate that before. So let me know what we can do for you. Thanks so much for the great questions.
Thank you, Calypso. Please stay with us for all panel. April, I'm going to transition to Stacy, if you don't mind. Just want to let Allison know we have captured your question and we will save that for Calypso during the all panel. So April, do you want to turn things over to Stacy or?
Yes, I think that'd be great. Let's go ahead and turn this over to our moderator, Miss Stacy Nichols.
Hey guys, my name is Stacy Nichols. I'm a returning member of the Southwest IFSP State Council. I've had 1 year of prior service on both the state and regional councils, and I bring a strong commitment to advocacy and systems improvement for individuals with disabilities. Professionally, I serve at Brain Injury Solutions as a telehealth project director for Community Living Connection, or CLIC. And this is a program that delivers online brain injury interventions to brain injury survivors across the Commonwealth and beyond. My advocacy spans multiple roles, including longstanding involvement with the Special Education Advisory Council, or SEAC, in Roanoke County Public Schools, service as a Keurig-Wren Mid-Atlantic USA ambassador, engagement with Roanoke College's Disability Studies program, and prior participation on the Medicaid member board alongside ongoing legislative advocacy efforts. My special interests include disability rights, GRE, neurodevelopmental disorder, and other rare disorders, as well as Tourette syndrome, and of course, brain injury. Outside of my professional and volunteer work, I enjoy staying active, spending time outdoors, and especially at the beach, reading good books, and connecting with family and friends. Tonight, I will serve as moderator for our panel of families who support their siblings. Rhonda, if you wouldn't mind, just please keep us on time. I'd like a 10-minute and a 5-minute warning to wrap. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce our first panelist, Sean Campbell. Sean is a 4th-generation public educator, that's incredible, and has over 25 years of experience in public education. Sean earned both his bachelor's degree in psychology and his master's degree in child development at Virginia Tech. He also holds a postgraduate certificate in gerontology, educational leadership, and disability leadership. Sean graduated from the Partners and Policymaking program in 2013 and the Virginia Lend program in 2019. Currently, Sean serves as the chairperson of the advisory board for the Powhatan Department of Social Services and as the president of the board of directors for the Disability Law Center of Virginia. Over the past decade, Sean has served on multiple work groups for the Virginia Department of Education, the Office of Children's Services, and the Commission on Youth. He and his son, Alex, have been strong advocates at both the state and federal levels, helping advance legislation to limit the use of restraint and seclusion in public schools. As a result, clear state mandates now define when these practices can be used, the types and frequencies of actions allowed, and the reporting and accountability requirements for school staff. Sean and Alex continue to address current issues while planning for future needs and driving for ongoing systems change. Sean is a dad to 2 amazing sons. He's a husband, an advocate, an educator, and generally a nice dude. In his free time, Sean enjoys watching horror movies with his wife, who is also an educator, and spending time with his 2 sons. He's an avid reader and enjoys working with local nonprofits and attending live music concerts. So Sean, I'm so impressed with all of these levels of your background. And I have a 4th-generation public educator. That's incredible. So I just really appreciate all of your service and your family service as well, all of these years. So I do have a couple of questions for you. And again, just considering your very diverse background and experience, what advice would you give to parents who are just beginning this journey with their own family?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I really wish at the time somebody had taken me aside to share some of their insights. So the first thing that came to my mind is that when people hear that you're a parent, everybody knows that being a parent is hard work. But when you're a parent of a child with a developmental disability, it's exponentially harder. And people have always come to me and they're like, oh, you must be an expert in everything. And I'm like, no, I am not. And the first piece of advice I would tell anybody and any parent is that you're not going to be an expert in everything. And that's okay. The first thing you really need to do is to assemble a team and find experts that you can trust, Find experts that you can access, and find experts who are going to have your child's well-being as their number one goal. You know, it could be experts in the medical field, could be in educational services, related services like OT, PT, could be advocacy services. It could be finding the right family and the right friends that you can lean on who aren't going to criticize or going to pass judgments on you. And I would say conversely to that, you also want to identify some individuals who may not be adding much to your journey with your child. You know, in my work, we refer to that as strategic abandonment. So, you know, it's about finding some of those cases where, you know, it's okay to kind of pull back a little bit, because then that allows you more time to spend with your family, spend with your child, but it also allows you more time to really hone in on those areas that you might want to learn more about. And for us, you know, one of the big, I guess, areas that we found that we didn't know and we couldn't identify an expert was more of the advocacy and legal piece for us in the beginning, and didn't know everything. But you know, it was about teaching yourself and becoming that learner, and also learning quickly. The second thing I would recommend to anybody is to extend grace. If you find the right people who really care about your child, extend grace. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Extend, you know, kindness goes so much further. And I would also say you need to extend grace to yourself, because as parents, we're not perfect. We make mistakes. And it's okay to own those mistakes and go, okay, tomorrow's a new day. What can we do better? What can we make sure that everything's going to be better tomorrow? And that's okay. You know, it's a learning lesson for everybody. And then the third thing I would say, and that, to me, this is probably the most difficult, but it's also the most important. You have to empower your child. You have to make them a part of that team that you assemble of experts. Your child has to be the driving force. They have to be there. And so when I think about our journey, I think about we're probably very unique to most parents that I've talked to. Most parents that I've spoken with, they say, "Oh, preschool was fantastic, kindergarten was great," and then slowly over the elementary years, things started getting more and more challenging. And once we hit middle school, oh my goodness, the whole world just fell out in middle school. That didn't happen for us. For us, preschool, kindergarten, those years were horrible. They were awful. They're scars, you know, that we still bear. But as we went up in grades, the world caught up with my son, and the world was able to then embrace and go, wow, he's different. He's different than anybody we've had. And when he hit middle school, there was actually an appreciation. So we crossed over, we found the right people. We found a principal who came to us and said, I want your son in my school. I want to have the opportunity to teach him. I see something in him that I don't see in any other child that I've come across. She then said, we need to pair you guys up with this case manager. Case manager was right out of college. She was young, but she was like, no, I want to be innovative. I want to take this on. My understanding is he's been challenging for years. I'm ready for that challenge. So to give you an idea of how we started that empowerment. So when he was about from first to third grade, I would talk to him about like what accommodations. And I would talk to him about, hey, these are the things you can expect to do and expect to have access to. About fourth grade, I started inviting him to his own IEP meetings. The local school system really had a problem with that. You know, they're like, he's too young, you know, we're having, you know, these issues. And I said, no, I think it's important for him to be there. And it's important for him to listen and see what we talk about. And by sixth grade, he was the one who was hosting or calling the IEP meetings. He was the one saying, hey, these accommodations aren't working for me, or hey, I think I'm going to need these additional accommodations. We need to have a meeting to talk about this. And I knew I kind of hit the jackpot in 6th grade when one of the related services providers and I were having a bit of a discussion, a heated discussion, and he goes, "Time out, guys. It sounds to me like I need to request an independent education evaluation." And I went, "What?" And the OT, the provider went, "What?" And he said, "Yes, it sounds to me that you two are disagreeing. We need to get an IEE. And let's see what that IEE says. So that way we can come back to the table." And I was like, "Well, there you go." Who can argue with that? Coming from he's right. And then with this case manager in middle school, we learned that by 8th grade, he was co-writing his IEPs. He was sitting down with her and co-writing this IEP. And then by the time he hit high school, he was writing the full-blown thing. From the present level to the accommodations to the services, he would write a draft. He would then take it to his high school case manager. They would sit down, comb through it. Then he would call a meeting, have us come to the meeting, and then he would say, "Okay, guys, this is where I am. This is what's working. These are my goals. These are the things I need to do. These are the things I want to do." And he was also very open so that we would say, "Well, have you thought about this?" "Oh, actually, no, I haven't thought about that." And so we had this team, this cohesive team, especially in his high school years, team of individuals who then were able to set him up for success for postgraduate. And that leads me to the next piece where even in high school, he was in what they refer to as the Advanced College Academy. He was taking dual credit courses. And he was told that he was the first student in Virginia to be in the ACA program who had an IEP. And they didn't know what to do because the community college, how they handle IEPs versus how a public school handles IEPs were different. But he was able to navigate these waters and blaze a path. So that way, when the students behind him came up, now they had a process. He was able to work with both. And it was tough. And to his credit, he actually reached out to the president of Reynolds College and got her involved and said, "Hey, we're having some problems here." She came in as a kind of an outside team member and said, "Hey, I hear there's a problem here. Let's figure this out." And with her help, and his help, and who helped motivate the school board and motivate the superintendent to do what was right. That's how they were able to do that process, which then helped us set us up for success when it came time for colleges. Because you think about most kids when most high schoolers who go that college route, when they step out to a college and they're wowed by the campus. They're like, "Wow, look at this beautiful campus. Oh, look at everybody kind of wandering around, throwing frisbees and, enjoying the nice, beautiful sunny day." For him, that was secondary. The first thing he did is said, "We need to go talk to," they might call it the Office of Student Success, the Office of Student Services. He goes, "I need to find out how I can transfer my IEP and my needs and how they're going to best help me be successful in college." And so that was number one on our list. Everywhere we went, we would go to that office first. He would sit down, chat with them, and then there are a couple of places in Virginia. He came out and he goes, "As much as I would love to go here, no, after having that conversation, that's not a good fit." And I said, "Well, but they've got your major and they've got this." He goes, "No, let's go somewhere else." "Okay, let's go somewhere else." And so he landed at VCU. And he was absolutely amazed by their department. And I have to say, they were fantastic. They helped him navigate the system. They also, he was a self-advocate. So, jokingly, they're like, "Oh, you just let us know what you need, and we'll help you get that." But again, I think these are other things that when it comes time for being parents, we have to keep these things in mind, So there's a lot of these nuances and differences. And I credit all of this back to middle school and I credit it to his high school, because these teachers and these case managers on the middle school and high school level were willing to kind of give up some power to a student. You think about, especially in 6th grade, it's hard for somebody, especially somebody who may have been a teacher for 20, 30 years, to go, who is this 6th grader coming up, trying to tell me what they need and what they don't need. But the openness of that is what really, really clicked with everybody. And also having the right principal, who was also able to extend grace, because it wasn't perfect all the time. There were times when things would start going off the guardrails, and she was like, "Oh, we need to get you back on the road. Maybe it's time for us to call a meeting." And you go, "Yeah, maybe it's time for us to call a meeting. Okay, let's go back and let's revisit some things." And it's having the right case manager, and then sitting down and say, "Okay, who are the right teachers for the student? Who are the right teachers for him? Who are the teachers who are open-minded? Who are the teachers who won't get into a power struggle? Who are the teachers who will embrace the diversity and who will appreciate, what he can bring to the table, instead of criticize what he needs to be successful?" And even in high school, we did come across a couple of little bumps here and there. But I think after having conversations with these teachers, pulling them aside, having conversations, I would like to think that they became better professionals, because then they realized that, hey, I was taught this way, and maybe that's not always the right way. Maybe there are other ways to engage and to help other students become engaging and successful. So I know that's a whole lot to say to
Thank
two
you.
of
Yes,
us.
you gave us a really great overview, and we started a little late, but we wanted to get to our other two panelists. If you don't mind, we will circle back for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Thank you, Sean. What a tremendous amount of phenomenal information. So I look forward to circling back. Our next panelist is Daniel Soya. Daniel is a member of the IFSP Northern State Council. He was adopted from Russia before he was 1 year old. Daniel has autism, ADHD, and is on the spectrum. Growing up, Daniel always knew he was different. Through his journey as a disabled student, he overcame many school challenges through self-advocacy and hard work. Daniel enjoys collecting coins, art, and self-advocacy. His passion is helping other people with disabilities and their parents navigate their journeys, especially those who were once in his shoes. Daniel is committed to sharing his story and pushing for greater understanding and inclusion. His achievements include running a fully functioning meditation group for people with disabilities while in college, engaging in many events with the Arc of Nova and Broad Futures, and also helping inclusion consultants. Being different is not a weakness. It just makes Daniel achieve success in a different way. So Daniel, can you tell us what was one of the biggest things that helped in your journey in the school system as a disabled student?
One of the biggest things that helped me was staying authentic and true to myself. I was friends with a lot of my teachers. I became very close to them. I was in smaller classes growing up, and I had some teachers and I went to some schools that didn't work out for me. But the teachers who did help me and did put that effort in, I really gained a good, close relationship with them, and we established a lot of trust among each other. So if I had a problem, I can always go to them, or if they noticed something, we could figure out a solution and work to fix it.
That's phenomenal. I'm so glad to hear that you were able to establish that trust and to have those good relationships. And so that really leads into our next question, and it probably is somewhat related. But what do you feel is the best way for students to advocate for themselves at school?
I would say stay true to themselves, and I would say focus on what you really need. Don't try to say, oh, this other kid is receiving this help, or I heard this works. Think about what you truly need and what truly works for you. Don't be embarrassed to ask for something. Maybe it seems different or weird, but everyone has different strengths and goals. So you really have to zero in on what is going to make you better authentically.
That is wonderful, Daniel. I don't know if you guys can
Thank
see
you.
me. I feel like I have sparks flying off my pen as I'm jotting down notes from everyone tonight. There's just so much incredible information. So thank you so much, Daniel. I appreciate your sharing that with us.
Of course, thank
Our
you for
next
having me.
panelist, yes. Our next panelist is Sarah Bunger Horne. Sarah Bunger Horne is a regional community engagement specialist at Center for Family Involvement at VCU. She is also a registered yoga teacher and owns Hanover Yoga and Wellness, offering resources for caregivers of individuals with disabilities. She is the mother of Patrick, age 8, who has disabilities including autism, ADHD, SPD, and ID. Patrick is on the DD waiver waitlist. His journey began in early intervention at age 2, and he is now in special education. So Sarah, a question I'd like to ask you, was there a time when you felt overwhelmed or uncertain? And if so, what helped to keep you moving forward?
Well, it was very overwhelming. Very much like Sean said, similar for us, the preschool and kindergarten phase was very overwhelming just because we didn't know exactly his abilities and his intellectual abilities at the time. The school didn't know, we didn't know. So that was a very unknown moment when the school was determining his eligibility and doing the evaluations, because it takes time. It's not like we'll find out next week. It's data that they're collecting, and you're kind of confused about, what are you collecting this data on my child? And over time it makes sense. It does. So, be patient with your school and the teachers when they're collecting that data. And that's a good time too for you outside of school to do your work, going to get your own evaluations through your own private places and your own private insurances and through your own community service boards and in the community, and getting evaluation set up and formal diagnosis that can only help going back into the school. So you're all coming together as a team to see this whole picture of outside and inside the school, to see what is going to be the most appropriate supports to set up, and to see if the eligibility really makes sense all around. And so that was a really unknown time for us. It was stressful. It was confusing. We also were kind of grieving, like, what is going on here? And then you come back and the school gave us their eligibility recommendations, and it matched what we had also received diagnosis. And it kind of, from there was when I started to realize, like, we really are working as a team here. And we started to move forward from there. So that was the biggest challenge. And, we still have our challenges, but being able to kind of look at everyone as a team has been the biggest way to move forward.
That's wonderful, Sarah. And I love that too, that in the midst of all of that uncertainty, that you felt empowered to go out and to seek your own data as well. Because again, as you said, coming into that situation with information from school and also information from the outside, as you said, right, that non-academic perspective really helps everyone to come together and put together a plan that is very well balanced moving forward. So I love that. With all that being said, what do you wish someone had said to you at the beginning of this journey?
That, and I think someone did say it to me, that the journey isn't easy. You talk to any parent that has a special needs kiddo, it isn't easy. You talk to every self-advocate, they know it's not easy. And it never gets easier. What happens is that you become more educated, so you become stronger and wiser. That's what happens. So it's not like, oh, someone's journey is easier, or it's all hard. It is all hard. Having a kid in general is hard, but you add these extra evaluations and diagnoses and everything. it's all hard, but you will, with the resources that we've provided today, with talking to other parents like this, you will gather the strength and the wisdom, and you will get stronger to do this. I promise you.
Wonderful. And also combined with what Sean said as well, that we don't always have to be, as parents, the experts, that we can gather those people that help and also shed those people who aren't helping. I love that strategic abandonment notion there. I think we can all stand to remember that and implement that in our lives. Well, thank you guys so very much for sharing all of this information. Again, I just am taking a ton of notes over here. At this point, we have approximately 15 minutes for our general Q&A. Just a quick reminder to our audience, please place your questions in chat. When sharing or asking questions, please do not disclose personal, private, or protected information. All right. So now I have some questions and yes, ma'am.
Just one thing, a little change, because I know we have questions that we received earlier, but I wanted to prioritize those that were in chat for Tammy and for Calypso, because we are a little bit short on time than usual. So Tammy, from chat, from Farwa, she stated an elementary level student has an IEP and receives special education services in general education settings and is a wonderful student. Once the child returns home, he is showing severe self-harming behaviors. The child verbally is stating that school gives him anxiety. These behaviors are only evident at home. How can the school system help that parent to figure out the problem and how to better transition home?
Sure. Based on what I'm hearing here, this is a big story. So let me say it's based on what I'm hearing here. With the school system, if you want help from the school system, go in and have a conversation or have a phone call and share what's happening and see if the school can give any insight as to what's happening at school that might be leading to that. And potentially come up with some things and plans to try and see if it alleviates this or alleviates that, right? In addition, they may decide that this is happening more than they think at school because you described what it looks like. And so it could turn into, additional supports at school. Outside of that, I will say that they may also recommend, or you may contact someone else who recommends that you some outside services to look at ways to also work with supports at home, because self-harming behaviors as a parent are not just difficult for the child, but they're difficult for the family to watch as a parent, to see that. So see, and talk to your doctor, talk to if you're connected to the CSB, talk to your CSB caseworker. Find out what other supports might be there that can build from what's happening at school and what's happening at home and build a more comprehensive plan through that.
Okay, thank you. And for Calypso, this question is from Allison. She indicates that she has a friend who told her about a setup where kids with emotional and behavioral issues that have trouble doing work cannot attend a regular school. She has a mindset now that she won't be able to learn or go to college and have a regular adult life. What can Allison say to help her find other options?
Ooh, well, I can say from a virtual learning perspective, virtual learning school looks just like a regular school as far as demographics are concerned. We have kids who, all spectrums. In fact, we had kids who went to the Olympics this year as ice skaters, all the way down to kids who are homebound, to kids who just need an alternative placement for a little while to get credit recovery. We have kids in virtual learning that are coming out of a juvenile justice system and need a couple weeks in transition before they go back to in-person school. So my advice is always go to your local school division, advocate for your child, and like our parents said on the panel too, and our previous student, that like advocate for yourself. Like, what is it? And I would think too, if we're having emotional behavior issues, that is a more community-driven support too. Like, what can we do for counseling and behavioral health and all these beautiful things that you guys, the wraparound services school divisions can offer now. School divisions now have more telehealth and medical issue support that they can offer now, and those kind of things. So just go to your school division and ask for resources. Any kind of behavior or emotional issue will not keep you out of a virtual school automatically. I will say attendance and lack of academic progress will keep you out of virtual school. So you can't be failing traditional school and then expect to get into a virtual program. If you're not being successful already coming to school, putting you in a virtual program usually does not statistically work out. So I wouldn't start virtual school if you're asking a virtual learning question, but go to your school, take that resource guide that we have, and that might actually work for a broader question of like, what services do you offer and those type things. So I hope good luck with your friend.
Okay. Thank you, Calypso. And Tammy, just to be advised that Rebecca from our audience sent you an email, so maybe you can take a look at that tomorrow and respond. Sarah, I'm going to turn it back over to you so that you can continue with questions with our panel.
Sure. All right. I have a great question that I think would be fantastic for Tammy. And that question is, can a representative from PEATC look over my child's current IEP?
Sorry. Excuse me. I'm going to interrupt just quickly.
Sure.
Stacy, if you could go to the families so Sean, Danielle, and Sarah, since we addressed the questions from the audience, and we have until about 8:10.
Okay, we got it. All right.
Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So let's see. So we have a question here for Sean. That question is, what resources did you find most helpful in your journey when your child entered the school system?
Honestly, other parents, organizations like PEATC, the Arc of Virginia, just having talking to other people who are on a similar journey, not exact same, but similar journey, help to identify members of that team.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. All right. This next question is for Daniel. What is the one thing that stands out in your mind that your teachers or school staff did to make you feel supported, understood, and included at school?
That's a great question. And the answer to that is the really good teachers I had kept in constant contact with my mom. So my entire support team really respected each other, and they all came together to help me. And I had an IEP, so we would all come together and make a plan, and I could trust them, they could trust me. They were all always there for me as well. They always supported me, and they also checked in on me on a regular basis, so I never felt nervous or awkward or shy at all, because having autism, socially, sometimes it's harder, so they made that a lot easier for me.
Daniel, that is phenomenal. And you really weren't kidding when you said that you had really good and great relationships with folks at your school. That is evident. So I'm so glad to hear that. Sarah, this next question is for you. What is something that your son has taught you that you think everyone in education should understand?
That nonverbal does not mean non-aware. We talk about that a lot. Assume that he is competent and knows, and he is aware, and that has tremendously helped with his behavior. And so that's been the biggest kind of thing we've implemented in his school with people. When he doesn't talk, they assume they can talk at him rather than still having a conversation with him, and that's very important.
That's wonderful, and that's such an important point to make for sure. So, all right. Well, this next question is back to Sean. What was the most important thing that helped your child succeed in school, And what barriers did you have to overcome to get support to meet your child's needs?
So I think one of the most important things that helped them succeed was really finding the right team at the school, again, the principal, case manager. Some of the barriers that we faced really, and we're still tackling this, other families are still tackling this today, is the whole notion of twice exceptional. You know, we had a gifted teacher who just refused to give him any accommodations for gifted testing because she didn't believe in it. And she put it in writing that she just didn't believe in it. And it's just an interesting mindset that there are folks out there who have a narrow vision, and it's helping to educate some educators and connecting them with the right resources so that way they can better understand how they can serve all kids and not just certain kids. So
wonderful, wonderful points. And I'm sorry that you guys had to go through some of those things for sure. So, all right, Daniel, if you could change one thing about how schools support students with developmental disabilities, what would it be?
I would say the thing I would change is don't try to lump all kids into one narrative or one way to act, one way to behave, or one way to be. Everyone's an individual, and we need to look further into the details of everyone and appreciate them for their differences and for their uniqueness, and find ways to make their uniqueness, how to turn that into strengths rather than disabilities. So if someone wants to walk around and can't stand still, maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe you let them walk around and they can do their homework 10 times better. So I would change that. I would basically just bring forth more authenticism and appreciating students for who they are.
I love that. And I love your focus on authenticity. It's so very important. And, in the brain injury support world, we have a saying that I think really extends into persons who are living with disabilities. And that is, if you know one person with brain injury, you know one person with brain injury. And I really think that carries over here as well. So I appreciate that. Rhonda, how are we doing on time?
We have about 3 minutes before we turn it over to, I think we can ask Sarah. Next question.
Excellent. All right, Sarah. The next question for you is, what advice would you give to parents who are just beginning to navigate special education services and creating IEPs, requesting those accommodations and all of those other special services for their child? What advice would you give to those parents at the start of that journey?
Rest. Rest, and then get to work when you're ready. Don't try to, and I'm guilty of this. I'm like, I'm going to learn it all tonight. I'm going to Google all of it and learn all of it. And I do that. I try to cram it all in, and you'll burn yourself out. Rest. It will be there tomorrow. Utilize the resources like PEATC. They have all of the resources out there are going to have videos for you to watch, trainings for you to watch, and you're going to say and think, I don't need to do that. And you do, but you don't have to do it tonight. You don't have to do it tomorrow. You will do the stuff that you need to do at that time. So like Tammy had talked about that age 14 and the IEP changes to talk about transitional, like that blows my mind. That's in 5 years for my child, that I'm like, I don't even want to begin to think about that. And you'll feel your initial like not wanting to do that, like resistance. But now I see, well, if we start to actually implement those transitions into the IEP, we can start setting that up for those, like that transitional, like you will see where it makes sense and that everyone is trying to help you. Because it seems like it can be like, oh my goodness, that doesn't feel like help. That feels overwhelming. Rest. That's the time to rest. because it is there to help, and you will see that when you're not tired and you're not overwhelmed, you'll see, oh wow, this is going to be helpful. And that's why I say rest, because you will need the information at the right time, and it is there for you. And parents like Sean are there for you, because we're ready to like tell you, and you might not be ready to take it in. So rest, and when you're ready, we'll be there for you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I don't know about you guys. I have a lot of things that I'm adding to my parental checklist. So especially that strategic abandonment. I mean, I will be using that phrase every day for probably the rest of my life. And especially with Daniel, that authenticity. And I really took away from you just making sure that we're asking for the things that we need, right? Because it's overwhelming if you get beyond that and you're comparing and contrasting with other people. And especially, Sarah, rest. I am putting rest on my to-do list. Wonderful, wonderful words of wisdom from you guys. So we just greatly appreciate that. Rhonda, do we have time for any more questions, or are you ready for me to wrap up?
Let's wrap and turn the meeting over.
Sounds good. All right. Well, attendees, thank you so much for your attention and interest on this educational topic. And we'd like to extend a special thanks to Lisa Richard, the Regional Network Coordinator for the Southwest Virginia Council, in partnership with the Center for Family Involvement at VCU. We'd also like to extend acknowledgement to the remaining Southwest Regional Council members who participated in organizing this regional meeting. So I know I saw here tonight, La Sharon Diaz, Nikki Jackson Plaster, Allison Hart, and our communications extraordinaire, Stephen Grammer. We'd like to remind you to please make sure that you complete our post-meeting survey. So Rhonda, if you wouldn't mind dropping that link in the chat. And at this time, again, thank you all for your attention, and I will turn the meeting over to Jenny Bullard for final announcements and our closeout.
Hello, my name is Jenny Bullard. I am a member of the IFSP Southwest Regional Council. I've been an independent living advocate with Appalachian Independence Center for 5 years. I work with the disabled community, which is a person who identifies as having a disability at any age and who strives to maintain and excel their independence through advocacy, daily living, and transitioning to new things. Services I extend to the community include assisting people with receiving home modifications and extending general information and referral services to people abroad. I advocate for and with people with disabilities to promote full participation in our society. Now I have updates and announcements. The IFSP State Council meeting will be held Friday, June 26, 2026, from 12 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. This is an administrative meeting for State Council members only. The next one is the next IFSP Coordinated Regional Council meeting will be held Thursday, July 16th. And once again, that is Thursday, July 16th, between 6 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. Development, and it will be focused on developmental disabilities, emergency planning, and preparedness. This will be a virtual educational session and open to the public. Heather, please drop in the chat where the recording and PowerPoint slides will be shared on My Life, My Community website, if you would. And also, please share the link in chat and on the IFSP Community Facebook page. please. And another thing is to receive the latest updates from IFSP. Please make sure you are subscribed to the mail list and then Heather, if you wouldn't mind, just go ahead and please share that link. And the very last thing is I want to really thank all the main presenters, the expert panelists, the Southwest Regional Council, and the Regional Network Coordinator, and the IFSP staff. To all attendees, your participation is appreciated. Please stay tuned with the IFSP program for more important dates. We hope you have gained some useful information. I know that I have. Have a great night.